Hi, I'm John,
I'm Nick.
and we're the owners of Patoma Music, and we're starting this new series this week where we're going to rebuild this Cort guitar we got from a local guitar shop owner. We've never rebuilt a guitar before, so this is going to be very exciting. As you can see, it's very rough and it needs a lot of help. Let's do a quick rundown of the guitar here. There's a lot of surface damage, a lot of rust. We actually have to replace the neck. There's no strings. The back, you see there's a lot of paint chipping. The truss rod in the neck's bad, so we have to replace that as well. Let's hear how this thing sounds. Alright, with all that out of the way, let's start the Cort guitar rebuild. This video is sponsored by me and Nick's company, Patoma Music, where we make picks with an extreme diamond grip. More on that later. The first thing we do is start the strip down of the body. Nick cuts the last string off, and he cuts them from the neck as well. I start scrubbing the guitar, but it didn't do much because the surface damage and rust is just so ingrained in it. We unscrew the neck from the body. The next thing we do is remove the pickguard by using a drill because the screws are too rusted. As you can see, it's filthy under there and all those components need to be replaced. Ew, look at all that rust. The next thing to go off the body is the tremolo. We remove that. And Nick actually finds a pick inside of there, which is interesting. Next we get rid of the input jack. And as you can see, this is what the body looks like without any of the components. To get rid of the surface rust and dirt, we throw in the sandblaster for a quick clean. Our plan is to fill in the holes left by the pickups and other components, so we need to cut out templates in order to cut wood to fit in those gaps. We first traced the templates onto clear paper, and then we traced them on a cardboard, in which then we transferred them onto wood. As you can see, they fit pretty well in those gaps, and as you can see, I actually took my turn on this and I transferred to wood. Nick pulls out his jigsaw and begins to cut out those pieces of wood. After the pieces have been cut out, we fill the gaps with wood glue, get it on the blocks as well. We got to make sure there's no gaps. We don't want the tone to be affected. That fits right like a glove. Next, we move on to the main cavity of this guitar. We're not planning on putting a pickguard in there, so we got to make sure it looks perfect. Get some wood glue on there. We don't want any gaps, and it goes in perfectly. Onto the third piece, goes in smoothly as well. The next two we fill in, and they're actually a tighter fit, so we actually took a screwdriver and had to bash them in. The final piece of this layer, fill it with glue and push it in. This one we didn't have to use a screwdriver. Here's a look at the first layer of wood inside that cavity. Off camera, we went ahead and repeated the process, putting in a second layer of wood fill. And now it's time to fill in the rest with wood paste. Using his finger, Nick takes some of the wood paste and starts filling in all those gaps. We have to make sure to cover all of the little gaps, nooks and crannies, or we will see them on the finished product of the guitar. After about a day, the paste hardened and it's now ready to be sanded. Nick takes out his sander and begins the long sanding process. We really want a really smooth finish on this. No bumps, just a flat surface face. Here we're switching between different grits, going from a heavier grit to a lighter grit so that it's smoother. Nick then takes a piece of sandpaper and starts doing the rest of the body, making sure it's smooth, and Nick blows away all the remaining sawdust to leave a nice finish. Here's the new neck I mentioned earlier. It's also a Cort guitar neck. We get started buffing that out and getting it ready for painting, getting a lot of that surface damage off. For this guitar, we decided to go with a Floyd Rose tremolo, so we had to cut out new cavities in both the front and back of the guitar. These plus one extra means we had to cut out 6 holes in this guitar. To protect the guitar from splintering when we route it, we put some painter's tape on it to hold it down. It gets a lot on there. So we're going to be routing out a ton of the front of this thing. To find the center of the neck and the body, we use a laser and a square to find the spot of the first cavity. Here we're going to start with the Floyd Rose front cavity. Nick pulls out his router and gets to work. He's got to make a few passes on this because we had to hit a certain depth, but we don't want to go all the way through. Here Nick starts in the exterior, and you can see the finished product. Next we get started on the Floyd Rose rear cavity. Nick again takes the exterior on this, but this hole is way bigger, so we use a combo of drilling out sections beforehand. And here's the finished hole. Next we move on to the Floyd Rose recessed front cavity. Nick again takes out the router, gets to work. It's actually on top of the original hole, and there you see it. Next we move on to the humbucker pickup cavity. This is where the pickup's going to be stored. Got to make sure to center it so that the strings are in line with the correct spots. And there you see it, all done. And here's a satisfying look at Nick peeling the tape. He kind of messes it up, but still pretty satisfying. Moving on, this is going to be the final hole we cut into this guitar, and it's going to store all of the wiring for it. For some reason, this is the most sawdusty hole, and Nick should really be wearing eyewear there. As you see, he's getting coated with sawdust. The wood of the guitar is a really nice maple, so maybe that explains why Nick's getting blasted with the sawdust there. Getting really coated. It looks like it's snowing almost, as he continues to cut out the hole for the wiring components. For this hole we had to make our own template. Didn't come with one, but we think we did a pretty good job on it. For all those worrying, no, the guitar is not on fire. It's just Nick burning through that wood. This hole actually took the longest since we had to get the right depth. Here's a look at that finished hole. The next step in this process is going to be painting the guitar, so we gotta get a nice gritty layer for the paint to stick to. Nick takes a light sandpaper there and scuffs up the whole body with it. Here's the primer we're going to be using. Nick gets to work on getting that first layer of primer on there. He makes sure to hold the can far enough away so we don't get splotches and drips. We're going to be putting a ton of coats on this to make sure we don't miss a spot. After the primer's dried, we get to work painting our first color on the guitar. We're painting it like our green packaging for our pick. So there's going to be 4 different colors of green on here. It's almost going to look like a Frankenstrated green guitar. We're also doing the pattern on the neck as well. Next we're moving on to that second shade of green, getting a good amount on there. We've taped off sections that are going to remain that first light color of green, while not taping off the others because we're just going to paint over them later anyway. This is our first time using this spray gun, so we had to work out some kinks in the process. But after the first coat of paint, we really figured it out. Did the same on the neck there. The more and more we painted, the better and better we got with the layering and making sure to get the right amount of paint. Moving on to the third green, this is almost like an evergreen. This is going to be the darkest green we put on the guitar. Third of 4. Make sure to get the sides. A word of advice that we learned through our first guitar process here was don't paint in April. It's the most rainy month. We lost so many days because it was too humid out to paint. So don't paint in the spring. That's all I gotta say. Also, here's our 4th color. It's going on the center. Make sure to tape off everywhere but the middle. And here's the back, getting its final coat of green. And get the tops. Making sure to fix any misses we might have. And doing that final bottom right corner. You have to make sure to cover up that other color of green paint, ensuring we get good coverage so it doesn't show up in the final product. We move to the neck where Nick again paints the 4th color onto that neck. Here's a look at the guitar. Before we clear coat it, I hand drew some lines between the colors just like in our packaging, and I did the same for the neck. We actually lost the footage for the clear coat, so in the next scene you're going to see it all done. We move on to the components where Nick solders together the 2 knobs. And he pushes them through their respective holes, screwing them into place. And finally pushing them on, crimping them together, and putting the second knob on. And looky there, we have some knobs. Nick then solders the controls to the grounding plate. After everything's wired up, we tuck it all in that cavity we left. The next thing we do is attach the pickup to the pickup ring and screw it into place. We then install the jack plate, making sure it's perfectly on there. And here's a nice view of most of the components on the guitar. Next we move over to the neck where we start installing the knobs, and look at that, looking beautiful. Big thanks to DR Strings for sending us these strings to use in the project. The last thing to do on this guitar is to string it up. Here Nick starts unscrewing the Floyd Rose tremolo so that we can fit the strings in. The Floyd Rose was another clip we lost during filming, but as you can see, it's perfectly installed there. And that's the guitar all strung up and all geared out. It's looking beautiful. Look at that neck, look at the top. You can't even tell that there were holes and cavities in the guitar. It's smooth. The finish came out very shiny and perfect. All the holes and cavities are cut perfectly for the Floyd Rose to fit in. But the big question is, how does it sound? Nick, let's see what this Cort can do. And there you have it. We finished the Cort guitar.
Thanks for the support, comments, and advice you guys have been giving us along the way.
Yep, it really kept us going, and it's even given us the opportunity maybe even do a second guitar. So look for that in the future, but for now, this has been the rebuild of the Cort guitar. Thanks for watching the Cort guitar rebuild. As mentioned earlier, our company is Patoma Music. You can follow us on our socials at Patoma Music on everything. Also, we have a website, www.patomamusic.com, where we sell our picks. Be sure to check them out.